Okay, and this is this contrast ratio will be changed. Yes, it's going to be a bit hard for so, yeah, I guess this is not a usual WordPress talk, so you'll have to give me a little bit of free rein, enough free rope to hang myself. This is also the first public unveiling of a new sister brand for Pragmatic, which is Decent, Decent.tech, or Decentralized Technologies. So Pragmatic is staying very much about WordPress and being a digital agency in a sort of more traditional sense. Decent is more about moving forward to what I think is sort of the future of digital and not corrupting what we're doing with Pragmatic, which will still be extremely relevant for a long time. So I have become, is this working? I just I don't really know how to use Macs, if I'm being honest.
Should we give that a try? There you go.
Yeah, cool, thanks. It's embarrassing. I might need to try.
Just if you want the batteries, they should come back.
Okay. Yeah, battery's fault. Silly batteries. So, I guess I'm giving this talk because I've become super interested in what's going on in this space over the last 6 months. Interested enough, in fact, that this weekend I was in Dallas, Texas, learning about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and blockchain. And I've tried to kind of hustle some of that learning into this deck as well. It's the first time I've given it, so I'll probably get about a third of the way through before Dan cuts me off. But what I want to talk about is why is it what are some of the challenges we're facing? What opportunity does this sort of suite of technologies give us? What are some of the things that you need to understand, know, some of the words you're going to hear? Why does this technology give us sort of an advantage? What's different about it? A few actual projects that are here and now you can get your hands dirty with. A few things that I think might happen, and some things that you might want to get involved with yourself just to see what you feel about it all. And also a big fat legal disclaimer that none of this is financial advice. I'm not qualified to see anything, etc. So when I talk about blockchain disrupting digital marketing, what I really mean is trust. This is about trust. What the core of this is about how trust changes relationships. And to explain that a little bit, I guess I'm going to give you a brief history of trust, which I think is on this slide, yeah? So when we were all kind of the first Homo sapiens running around in the Serengeti and plains of Africa, we had to trust the people in our group. We were a social animal. If we didn't work in a group, we'd be on our own, we'd die and get eaten by life. But we had a very sort of strong trust relationship. Either you're in the group or you're not, and if you're not, then we're probably going to fight you, and if you are, then we're probably going to try and make you. Then we moved into towns, and for towns to work, you've got to have somebody to build the houses, you've got to have farmers, you've got to have kind of specialised lifestyles, so you need to be able to trust at least some sort of currency. I'll give you some wheat if you give me a house, that sort of thing. As we got into bigger settlements, we needed ever more sophisticated institutions, international finance, different types of government, we need policies, police, law and order, and so on. And now we're in a kind of digital world, we need to trust computers and the corporations that run them to keep our data sensible, because the pace of life is such that I don't know how many jobs there are anymore where you can just write things down with a pen and paper and still get by. It's very hard to do anything without using a computer, so we have to trust that they're doing the right things, and often there are companies behind that. Blockchain kind of changes that because it means that we don't have to trust anyone. No companies, not each other, just the maths. So I'm going to go back to this. And so the challenge here is that nobody trusts much anymore. So there's a PR company, a global PR company, one of the biggest ones called Edelman, and they do a trust barometer every year. And it basically says that nobody trusts government, nobody trusts the media. People actually trust their bosses, which is pretty cool. And people don't really trust kind of peer-to-peer. Like, you don't trust what your friends are saying online or what kind of Joe Buggs on the street is saying. People do trust more like authority figures. So it's not true to say that people don't trust anything, but trust in some of our key institutions has failed, right? I mean, how much do you trust the democratic process with Brexit and Trump? And how much do you trust your credit history to be safe with Equifax? How much do you trust Facebook and Google to be looking after your data with your best will in hand? So there's a lot of trust issues and trust tensions in the world. And Edelman's summary basically says this is the existential crisis of our times, right? How can poor people trust rich people to not lobby government to make more laws in their favour? There's a lot of these kind of tensions that are quite clear in society, and there's a lot of volatility that bubbles under quite a sort of calm surface. And I'm personally quite worried that if we don't find a way to change some of those dynamics in a positive and sensible way, then we're going to see riots and all sorts of nasty things when that volatility pushes through. And so this is the opportunity is blockchain, I think, and I want to talk a little bit about why that is and some of the kind of practicalities of what it means, why it's so profound. Something to kind of bear in mind is this sort of whole idea of what the job of a marketer is. Most of the people in this room earn their money by taking money off marketing departments to do marketing things. Overall, it's our job to build relationships with people. Relationships in actually machines as well as humans are about trust. If you've got a trusted network, you don't have to have all the permissions, and if you trust your tribe, you don't have to have police people. So the jargon. How many people have heard of what blockchain, of the word blockchain? Like, pretty much everyone's heard it to some degree. I think it's worth just taking 2 minutes to run through a quick what is blockchain. This isn't my diagram. Where is the maximize button on that? There we are, thank God. So the way blockchain works is that I would request a transaction with Dan. I would say, here, I want to give you a Bitcoin, and that's the transaction. Dan says yes, obviously, and we need to request that transaction be processed. So it goes into this network, lots of nodes, and they're all processing the transactions as transaction hashes that record who sent what to where and any other data that comes along with that. Then the network runs like a consensus algorithm that basically says, yes, we, the network, agree that this transaction is a true transaction and it can be locked in, and that is then verified. The network through this algorithm, and there are a number of different algorithms. One, you've got a number of these transactions, they go together to form a block in the ledger, and that becomes a permanent part of the ledger. Each subsequent set of transactions gets added to the other one, and each block and each of the transactions within the block are all proved by cryptography. So you cannot change, if this is the head of the blockchain and this is the tail, you cannot change any details about any of the transactions in any of the blockchain without breaking the blockchain, without it being immediately obvious to everything. So it's like a kind of MD5 checksum. When you download, if you're a geek and you download software, and you think maybe the NSA has intercepted your download and you put some middle malware in, you can check that the hash matches up with what you've actually ended up with. This is like a hash for any kind of transaction. So it's immutable, you can't write here, it's read-only, append-only. And that's why it's a blockchain. It's chain blocks, they are irreversibly locked together through very difficult math problems. And once that's happened, the transaction is complete. Any questions about what the blockchain is how that all works, because it's quite important. Okay.
Sorry. Yes, I've got a brief one. Mining.
Yeah.
What's that?
So mining is the process of verifying those transactions and locking in the block. So all that maths work takes computational power, and so the network has to have people mining in order to be able to create those new blocks, and to generate in like proof of work currencies like Bitcoin. Not all the Bitcoin are mined yet, so the mining process also generates new Bitcoin as a reward for doing the maths that keeps the blockchain running, right? If nobody bothered doing the maths, then you never have a transaction added to a block, and it would close down. So it's kind of one of the economics of blockchain. But you don't have to. There are lots of different algorithms, and they're not all like that. The other part of blockchain, so it's basically each of the nodes in the network has a copy of that blockchain. So half the nodes could go, and the other half would still have a complete record of all the transactions that had ever happened. So it's totally decentralized, distributed. You've got that consensus by algorithm effect that everyone has to agree what's happened with that transaction. And there's this thing called smart contracts at the end, which are all kind of intertwined into what we call blockchain. Cryptocurrency is money based on blockchain, so it's a virtual currency, and it can be used for lots of different things. Smart contracts are basically just programmable, like it's building a contract, not a legal contract, I'm told by our legal advisor, but like an agreement. It's a programmable agreement between people that it operates on the blockchain. So if you imagine the blockchain is essentially like a global operating system, a smart contract is just a piece of code which executes when certain conditions are met, and people can't change that. The only way is one of the variables that go into the contract and say, when this money hits this bank account, when this Bitcoin hits this wallet, then transfer the deeds to this house to this address, that sort of thing. So it's a sophisticated way of being able to trust that certain things will happen when certain conditions are met. It's really interesting because you can scale it up to running a whole organisation. Yeah?
So how can you scale it? Because there are all reports of how do you prove who's the owner? And how does the new owner steal something and use it if it's all attached?
It's a good question. So if you don't practice good IT security, so like Mangox, something like that, basically wallets are, you've got a public address and then you've got private key. So it's like classic public-private key encryption. And if you are an exchange that doesn't secure your private keys very well, then you can get hacked and your sensitive data. So it's just like downloading passwords or any other kind of confidential information.
So it's not the blockchain itself that's the problem, it's the security.
Yeah. Oracles are things which can provide data to a smart contract. So it might be like, if I might make a bet with you and say, if this weather service says it's 22 degrees on this time, then I'll send you one Ethereum for, like, that's the sort of thing that we bet about. And you connect it to that service, it becomes an oracle, and if that condition's met, then the money that I have given that contract in escrow will go straight to you. No human interaction required, right? So it's a way of kind of programming interactions. Coins and tokens are kind of like cryptocurrencies, but they're a bit different. They are basically assets, either just an asset because it bloody is, or it's an asset that represents a real asset. They tend not to have their own blockchains. Cryptocurrencies tend to have their own blockchains as well. So Bitcoin has a Bitcoin blockchain, whereas there are tokens and coins that live on other people's blockchains and can be stored and transacted as part of that. A little bit of technicality, but these are all kind of key terms that you're going to hear more and more. dApps is really friggin' interesting. So this whole concept that basically the blockchain comprises a global computing network, like a global operating system. The dApp is an application that runs on that operating system. So it doesn't run on a single computer, it doesn't run on a server, there's no cloud, no client. It just operates on the blockchain, which is a bit mind-blowing, right? I can see it runs on the what? But it really does, because the blockchain basically acts as a giant processor, a giant computer. And dApps are therefore almost entirely resilient because the internet is, the blockchain is. So as long as you've got one node running, then a dApp will run on it, and you've got resilience. Cryptoeconomics is the terminology that's used to describe how things change when you've got cryptocurrency and when you've got blockchain in the mix. What does that kind of trustful, trust but don't trust, dynamic offer to relationships and economies? DLT, distributed ledger technology. Sorry for the acronym. So what are the key advantages? So we've talked about it being decentralized. So I don't know, the North America goes offline at the moment. That would pretty much screw the rest of the world because so much financial transaction and so much other information flows through it. This is a truly decentralized network in that you can take, as long as there's one node running or two nodes running, then the whole network will run. So it's super resilient. All the data in the blockchain is transparent and immutable. Everyone can track a transaction, except if you're using an anonymous cryptocurrency, that's a different thing. But unless you've designed, like, it's open by default. So the transaction that I did with Dan, you can all see. And if you know that that's my wallet and that's Dan's wallet, you can see that as any Bitcoin. Should be very fast and efficient transactions. There's no central processing thing. I don't have to wait for Visa to confirm the transaction and then send me a message back. It's just broadcast the network, incredibly powerful decentralized processing network. It sends it back, so we should be able to do extremely high scale, high volume transaction. Bandwidth. The system and the data itself are all available, so we've got that very resilient, decentralized network. That means that everyone's got a copy of the data. It means that anyone can access the data and anyone can do stuff with it. And we also know that we can have 100% faith in all the data going back, because if one bit of data is changed, the blockchain is like it would break. The hashes wouldn't add up. So it's extremely easy to validate massive swathes of transactions as being exactly as they should be. So here are some examples of how it will disrupt digital marketing. To get back to my talk topic, we'll talk about content marketing, about the problems with email and comment spam, talk a little bit about SEO and also about ad tech. And then I want to just try and cover off some broader stuff around, like, what does this mean for brands and how do you operate as an organisation in that new world. So this is a real life project. It's called Basic Attention Token, and it looks at the three parties that you have in a typical kind of web page view. You've got the publisher who's getting screwed by the advertiser, who's taking all their money and taking all their users' data, and then you've got the user who's suffering massive downloads of ads and is having all their behaviour tracked by the advertiser. And you've got the publisher who either has to load their site up with ads and or chase a whole bunch of clickbait content and or try and charge for subscription, which is a bit of a clunky model, especially in B2C. You know, paying me £5 a month. You know, what if I'm on holiday? I don't want to pay £5 for the newspaper I might read, or I might be in the mood, or it's just kind of a bit of a drag. So Basic Attention Token tokenises human attention. So it says for every arbitrary unit of human attention, that becomes a tradable commodity. So if a user is watching an advert, then that user should get rewarded by the advertiser for watching the advert. If a publisher's content is being read by lots of users, then those users are giving that publisher some attention, and they should give them tokens to reward them for that. And it also allows there to be kind of this anonymity and privacy shield, so you as a user can decide what you want to share with the advertiser and with the publisher. So you're in control of the data. The advertiser is far more in control of their spend because they can be assured that this user is a genuine user, it's not a bot, and the publisher can be assured that if they get lots of people looking at their content for a good amount of time, then they're going to get tokens and they're going to be able to pay their way. They're not beholden to advertisers so much. It's a bit of a thing to get your head around. Does that kind of make sense a little bit? So you can earn basic attention tokens, you can buy them, you can earn them by having great content that people look at, and you can earn them through watching ads if you're a user. But it's a currency, so you can trade it. I can take them to Gittrex and I can trade that for Bitcoin or for pound sterling, and I can buy my groceries with those tokens, right? Steam, I think, holds some really fascinating clues about what lies ahead. So, whereas Basic Attention Token says just implement this on your website and use this browser that has this add-on in and you can earn that on any platform, Steam, it says no, we think this is more of a social network play, and so it's like Reddit, but instead of gold, you have Steam dollars. It's like Medium, but instead of claps, you can pay your groceries because you can earn Steam dollars, you can trade Steam dollars on an exchange, and actually earn a living through posting content or by voting for curating content like marking comments as spam, or you can buy the tokens directly yourself as well. So it's really interesting, that kind of whole concept of, okay, so I've built a great profile on Stack Overflow, or I've got 1 million followers on Instagram, or a ton of gold on Reddit. Why would that not be something that I can take to a different platform? That's my data, that's my profile. I should own that. Why is that an asset or a commodity that I can trade? Another way that blockchain and tokens make things really interesting is changing the fundamental economics of bad behaviour online. So you've seen a whole bunch of bad uses of CoinHive, right? The government had all their sites attacked with the crypto miners because Browser Loud got hacked and nobody was doing SRI checks on their JavaScript embeds. But it can also be used in really positive ways as well. So one of my favourites is that, when you've got a spam capture, like a Google thing, and you're basically training Google's AI to figure out what's a car, what's a shop front, what's a whatever. An alternative to that is that you force people to do 2 seconds of crypto mining with their browser, totally negligible to anyone, takes the same amount of time, costs you like 0.001 pence in electricity, but you know what? That's more than the spammer's return, right? The economics of spam are so harmful and so rubbish. Like, they can send 1 billion emails, if they still make $2,000, they don't care about the 1 billion people they've inconvenienced, right? It's really broken economics. Actually, that's a bit of a weakness to the business model, because all we have to do is put a very, very, very small cost on each transaction. It's totally, like, we would never even notice it as individuals, as legitimate people, but it changes the economics of their reward payback. There's another service for email spam that does the same thing. Like, I can decide how much it will cost you to send me an email. And there's a guy that does it, actually. I think is it Mark Andreessen or something, and he guarantees to read any email you send him on it, but it costs you $25. And there's another one here for review fraud. I don't know whether you saw the guy that managed to get his shed to the top of TripAdvisor for it's because there's no accountability, there's no transparency. It's like anyone can say anything. I mean, there's loads of problems with it on Amazon, there's loads of problems with it everywhere. I mean, the screenshot that Adam showed, the first thing my eye was drawn to was like, Akismet has stopped 692 spam comments. I'm like, well, sorry Akismet, but that just seems like a really crap way of doing it. Like, why don't we just pull the rug under the whole spam comment network? I don't know if you ever read the story of the guy that was running the anti-spam plugins for WordPress. He basically had like a nervous meltdown after 5 years of going and seeing like snuff sites and really nasty stuff online. Like, it has a really bad cost for people, like all this bad behaviour. Crypto and blockchain gives us actual tools to promote good behaviour and disincentivise bad behaviour. SEO, like at the moment we've got this kind of attribution thing, so we can say relative author, and we can kind of do a certain amount of carrying our profile between different sites that we're writing on. Imagine that that's massively expanded out, so it's not just me adding a tag here, it's my identity that's embedded as a schema markup, or it's certifications that I've earned, or it's the amount of rewards that this post has earned. Like, imagine all of those going into ranking factors for search and social. It becomes a far richer kind of social graph, because you'll even be able to work out who contributed money towards that post and what else did they, suddenly becomes like infinite, really. I'll hurry up, this one's not really on our kind of radar so much, but basically ad fraud is like a massive, it's just ridiculous, like 7.2 billion estimates in like bots doing click fraud. So we can change that because we can stop all these crazy media buying agencies and programmatic scams and just run it all through a blockchain where you know who's looked at it, what price they paid. So you've got like utter transparency in what's a very dirty market. So this is talking more about like, what does all that mean, right? So the new thing here is that with a token, you can give a community the ability to provide an economy for itself, to trade within or without itself based on something that it has of value. And the internet itself gives us this like infinite list of subcultures, everyone's like crafters, vegans, crossfitters, people that are into dressing cats up, or all sorts of like crazy stuff, right? But there's no reason why all of those communities can't have their own tokens and have their own economies, which add value and align with their purpose, right? So what does this mean for the brands of the future, right? Well, I think it means that as a brand, you have to have a human value. You have to find something that's important that you want to achieve in the world, and you need to be able to articulate that clearly. But you also need to have an actual plan of how you're going to do that, right? It's like, I'm going to save the whales, but I don't really like going out on the sea and I don't like talking to anyone. It doesn't work. But if you've got a clear mission that people get behind and people believe you can do it, and you can get that community of people behind you, people that have invested in you emotionally and from a psychological point, but also financially, they've backed you like a Kickstarter with some tokens so you can go out and do that stuff, then that's the new brand. It's about being bigger than one person, being bigger than the community, giving these online communities some actual economic power to change policies, to change buying patterns, to change government policies. So what we're going to need to do as a brand, we're going to need to be able to stand up alongside a competitor that can say, I can prove the supply chain and provenance of my fish. I can tell you which fisherman caught it, I can show you the temperature of the ice in the boat all the way back, I can show you where it was processed, I can show you there's no slave labour from any of the workers there. Imagine trying to be the brand or the government that's standing up against that and going, oh, you don't need to see all that stuff, just believe me, it's fine, we're a really good company. It will become increasingly difficult to not provide these proofs once they are possible to provide. You're going to need to have that actual mission, that vision, and be able to make others believe that you can do it. And you're going to need to recruit that community around you to support you in a way that's got this circular value. So it's not just I make some shoes, you have the shoes, see you later. That's where the profit ends. It'll be like, let's make the best shoes that have ever been. And part of that is our CSR commitment. Part of that is that we're going to reward you for gathering data with your shoes that you pass back. And it's like, how do we build a brand that is all about the human passion of running? Or there's like a million examples. How do we be the most ethical vegans in the world? So what might happen? Facebook might buy or release their own token. Why would they not? They've got a marketplace, they've got social interaction, they've got problems with spam and heaven knows that's caused us some issues. If you're into ad buying, then you're going to have to innovate or maybe die. Everything that can be tokenized, literally, deeds to property, car insurance, anything that you can divide up as a thing, like beer, probably will be waste, electricity. There'll be units of all of these. They'll be tokenized. You'll be able to exchange them. Because why would you not be able to? This brand thing, you're going to have to, like, the sort of smoke and mirrors brands will fall out. You'll have to actually be adding some proper value. I think you as a consumer will own your data, so you'll have all of your electricity usage data that you own as part of your blockchain. And if you want to move provider, well, banking is a classic one for this, right? At the moment, to move provider, you've got to switch all your standing orders, your direct debits, and blah, 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 and put money out of this account, put it out. If you have all that stuff anyway, choosing a bank is more like whose card gives me the best reward system if I use it, or which colour do I like, or who gives me the best financial advice. You know, the internet is like protocol thin and application fat, which makes transitioning between service providers super difficult. Blockchain says the other. It says the protocol is super fat and the application is super thin. So the friction to migrate between brands, between services, becomes much, much less. It puts the power back into the people that have got the data, because we can have it. And why shouldn't I control all the assets? Why shouldn't I have those under my direct control? Why do I need to trust the bank if I don't need to? Or the educator or the government? You might give your browser 20 quid a month and say, I probably want to watch a bit of Netflix and see some content on this site, and if I've got some money left over, give it to charity. I think we'll see that kind of micro transaction and negotiation, bartering for goods and services going on through machines. And this kind of authoritative data source thing, you know, it would be like what's the authoritative data source for who won the Mets game, or how hot it was on that day, or what the value of Bitcoin was on any particular given hour. So what should you do now? I think you should check out some of these projects. You can download Brave, which is a browser that's got BAT in it. You can sign up to Steam it now. You can create a company profile. You can post content. You can get paid real life Steam dollars, although probably not many. You can do some learning. There's a great free course through the Linux Foundation, edX, about distributed ledger technology. You can think about how would you, as a brand, talk about your mission, your vision. Can you imagine having a Telegram group with 10,000 active users? What would they ask you? How could they? Why would they bother engaging? What's your authentic value that's going to drive your brand to the future? Think about what it means to be a customer, how you can get those circular bits of value. Be honest if you're reporting stuff up the chain, because transparency is coming. Excuse me. Yeah. And that's literally it.
Excellent, thank you very much. Again, we do have time for just a couple of very quick questions, if anybody's got any at all. Yes.
I think this is like a government service, from what I've read. That is going to be people trying to legislate. Now, that might be quite difficult to actually implement, but how do you feel about that in terms of the future of the technology and governments trying to stop this type of thing being a bit dark web?
Sorry. Some people are in politics for some reason, some are in politics for other reasons. Some people will feel threatened by it, some people will feel like it's the chance to achieve what they want. But certainly it has the power to disrupt and upset people with a lot of money and power. And it's likely there will be all sorts of kind of death row type behaviour. But I kind of feel like we're already seeing that anyway. Like the banks are just totally out of control. Government, just like the last couple of years. You know, educators are having to basically act like businesses and shoehorn kids through sausage machines to get qualifications which are designed for the average human that doesn't exist. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is dying anyway, right? So, to my mind anyway, like all of the big institutional things that we have going on, like name me one huge institution that you all love and think is doing a great job. You know, they cause tension all over the place, so either we let that continue and they continue getting wilder and wilder, and suddenly they'll be like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as freaking president. Actually, I need to be doing a better job. But you know, the point is we have to find a way to diffuse these tensions and to reconcile these kind of issues within society. And I think blockchain is a way of doing that that is the most positive way that I've come across in quite a few years of looking. So, yeah, people aren't going to like it, but I kind of think it might be a bit too late to stop anyway. So it's just how bloody it all goes.
Just on that subject, if people make money in cryptocurrencies or via transactions on blockchain, cryptocurrency, that kind of thing, it's the tax man doesn't say at present. I mean, is there a way that you can integrate?
Well, that's one of the misconceptions, right? Because Bitcoin and blockchain are actually about transparency, and it's far easier to track what's going on. So one of the things government can do, right, is to issue their own cryptocurrency, and actually then they know a hell of a lot more about you than they do at the moment, because they know all your transactions, they know what the percentage of tax is. You don't have to have a tax office because it can all just get deducted out of your balance by a smart contract. So goodbye HMRC. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of stuff that could happen.
But it's not there at the moment, obviously.
Well, you know, the SEC's saying that they're going to bring in regulations. They're going to, you know, this is going to be a security that's not. Here are the regulations. People are paying tax on it. There's a whole bunch of stuff that will happen that will take some of the crazy out. You know, institutional money's coming, regulations coming. South Korea, like a bunch of countries have stood up and say, look, this is happening. We actually think it's a good idea. We can regulate it. And if the tax man thinks that there's money to be made, which there is, then they'd rather regulate it and have some of that money. But you know, there's talk about this stuff, and it's like, how about the US dollar? Because that's only used for healthy, righteous people that do good things with it, and it isn't made up at all, and everyone pays their taxes honestly. You know, we've actually got power to root some of that corruption and stuff out.